The streetlights cast long shadows across South Shore Drive as Sergeant Philip Benjamin's taxi pulled up to his red brick two-story home. It was 2:17 a.m. on a humid July morning, and the neighborhood was eerily quiet. After 15 months in Afghanistan, all he wanted was to surprise his wife, Lucy, and hold her in his arms again. He wasn't supposed to be home for another 3 weeks, but the early return was a gift for her. Their 10th anniversary was only days away, and in his duffel bag, alongside his combat fatigues and dog tags, lay a white gold necklace he'd specially ordered from Dubai. The cab driver, an elderly man named Earl, helped him with his bags. "Welcome home, soldier," Earl said, refusing the extra tip Philip wanted to give him. "Your family must be so happy to have you back." Philip smiled, thinking of Lucy's face when she'd see him. They didn't know he was coming. He wanted to surprise her. Earl nodded, got back in his cab, and drove off into the night. Philip stood there, feeling a sense of relief and happiness after a long time away. For a moment, he looked at his house. Something felt off. There was a car he didn't recognize parked in front, a black Chrysler 300 with tinted windows and custom rims. Probably one of the neighbors had gotten a new ride, he thought, but a knot began forming in his stomach. The house was dark, except for a faint glow from their bedroom window upstairs. The porch light was off, which was strange. Lucy always left it on at night. As he approached, he noticed other small details that seemed wrong. The front garden, which Lucy had always tended meticulously, looked overgrown. Empty beer bottles lined the porch railing. Using his key, Philip quietly opened the front door. The living room smelled different, unfamiliar cologne mixed with marijuana smoke. Their wedding photo, which had always sat on the entry table, was face down. Then he heard muffled sounds coming from upstairs. His military training kicked in. Automatically moving silently, he sat down his bags. Philip climbed the stairs, each step carefully calculated. The sounds grew louder and clearer. He heard rhythmic creaking, heavy breathing, and a man's low grunt. The master bedroom door was closed but not fully latched. Yellow light spilled through the crack, along with the unmistakable sounds of sex. Philip felt his world tilt sideways, but his body moved with calm precision that had kept him alive in combat. He pushed the door open, and the scene burned itself into his mind in fragments. Tangled sheets, brown skin against brown skin, his wife's legs wrapped around a stranger's waist, their wedding picture on the nightstand. Time seemed to stop. Nobody moved. Then Lucy screamed. The man, muscular with dreadlocks and a tribal tattoo across his back, rolled off and reached for something on the floor. In the yellow lamplight, metal glinted. A gun. In Afghanistan, hesitation meant death. Philip crossed the room in 2 steps, caught the man's wrist before he could raise it. The man was holding a gun and drove his fist into the other man's throat. The gun clattered to the floor, and what happened next seemed like a horrible dream. Lucy screamed, the man gasping for air, but he continued to swing his fists, connecting with flesh, rolling on the floor. The gun slid under the bed, blood spraying across the white walls. In the chaos, Philip's hand found the gun, and 2 shots rang out, then silence. Lucy Benjamin stood in front of her bathroom mirror, carefully applying her MAC Ruby Woo lipstick. At 32, she still turned heads. Her gym-gymming kept her figure tight, and she took pride in her appearance. Today, she had chosen a fitted red dress that hugged every curve. Her phone buzzed on the counter, a text from her husband saying he couldn't wait to see her tonight. Philip was still not back from his business trip for 3 more weeks. She typed back, "All clear, come by after 9. Lucy stared at her reflection, trying to quiet the guilt that knotted her stomach. She and Philip had been high school sweethearts and married. Right after graduation, he joined the Army to provide a better life for his family. She supported his decision, but the deployments became longer and the distance between them grew wider. Somewhere along the way, she started feeling lonely. Then, 6 months ago, Williams walked into her life. He was everything Philip wasn't: spontaneous, dangerous, and exciting. What started as innocent flirting turned into drinks after work, then secret meetings, and finally, something she couldn't control. Her phone buzzed. This time it was Philip calling on FaceTime. "Hey baby," he said, his face pixelating on the small screen. He looked tired, with dust from the Afghan desert still visible on his uniform. "Hey," she answered, forcing a smile. "How are you? I miss you so much. 3 more weeks seem like forever. But hey, our anniversary is coming up. I have something special planned." "Can't wait," she lied, her stomach churning. They talked for a few minutes about nothing, but she knew something was different. They were both missing each other, but they had to stay strong for their families. Important, she told him about her work at the salon, carefully avoiding any mention of her job. Who'd become a regular customer, just to see her. "I love you," Philip said before hanging up. "Stay safe. Love you too," she replied, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. That day, her co-worker Shanice noticed her distraction. "Girl, you're playing with fire," Shanice warned, while mixing hair dye. "Job might be fine, but he's got a record, and Philip, that man loves you for real." "I know," Lucy sighed, arranging supplies. "It just happened, and now I can't stop. Can't stop. Get somebody killed," Shanice muttered. "Mark my words." By evening, Lucy had pushed away all thoughts of consequences. She'd ordered Philip's favorite takeout from Harold's Chicken, letting the delivery driver think it was for her husband. She changed the sheets, lit scented candles, and poured 2 glasses of wine. At 9:15 p.m., Job's black Chrysler 300 pulled up. He entered using the key she'd given him. Last month, it seemed like sin in the dark. He was wearing jeans and a fitted black shirt which showed off his muscular arms. "Damn, baby," he said, pulling her close. "You're killing me in that dress." They barely made it upstairs before clothes started coming off. The job had brought weed and more wine. They smoked, drank, made love, and made love again. Hours passed in a haze of pleasure and chemical courage. "Are you ever going to leave him?" Job asked around midnight, tracing patterns on her bare skin. "It's complicated," she answered. "The house is in his name. My whole life is tied to him." "I got money," Job said. "Been doing good with my business." They both knew his business wasn't entirely legal. "Just give me time," she said, kissing him to stop further questions. Neither of them heard the taxi pull up outside. Neither noticed the front door quietly opening. They were lost in each other, music playing low on the Bluetooth speaker. When the bedroom door swung open, their world exploded. Blood pooled on the hardwood floor, seeping into the cracks between the boards. 2 bodies lay motionless. Job faced down 2 bullet holes in his chest. Lucy slumped against the wall, caught by a stray round that had passed through Job and into her left shoulder. Philip stood in the center of the room, the gun still warm in his hand. His military training had taken over during the fight, but now the soldier was fading, leaving. A man was staring at the ruins of his life. He checked his pulse, then moved to Lucy, who was conscious but going into shock. Philip whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." His combat medic training kicked in. He grabbed towels from the bathroom and applied pressure to her wound. "Don't talk. Help is coming," he said. But he hadn't called anyone yet. His phone was still in his duffel bag downstairs. The neighbors must have heard the shots, and someone would call 911. Maybe not in this part of Chicago, where people learned to mind their own business when they heard gunfire. As if reading his thoughts, police sirens were wailing in the distance, growing closer. "I didn't mean to," Philip tried to speak again. "Just shut up," he said quietly. The sirens stopped outside. Car doors slammed, a flashlight beam swept across the windows. Chicago police opened up. Philip set the gun down carefully and walked downstairs, hands raised. He opened the front door to find 4 officers with weapons drew their guns, and didn't move their hands where we could see them. "I'm Staff Sergeant Philip Benjamin," he said calmly. "I'm the homeowner. There are 2 people injured upstairs. One of them is dead. My wife needs medical attention." They cuffed him anyway, as standard procedure, and led him to a squad car. Neighbors emerged from their homes, filming with phones. Mrs. Jenkins from next door stood on her porch in a nightgown, shaking her head sadly. "That poor boy," she muttered. "He fought for his country, just to come home to this mess." The next hours passed in a blur. The detective interviewing Philip at the station was a middle-aged black man named Williams. No relation to the job, he assured him. "Walk me through it again," Detective Williams said, recording device on the table between them. Philip told it straight. The early return, the strange car, the sounds upstairs, the gun under the bed, self-defense. His court-appointed lawyer, Patricia Morris, insisted the deceased had a weapon. "My client is a decorated veteran who found armed intruders in his home." Detective Williams corrected the other victim, who was his wife, who was participating in a home invasion by letting her lover into the house. Morris argued that the shooting was justified. At Chicago Med, Lucy underwent surgery to remove the bullet. Her parents arrived, her mother crying, her father stone-faced. They'd never approved of Philip thinking their daughter could do better than a soldier. Now they sat in the waiting room, avoiding the news crews gathering outside. By morning, the story was everywhere. A soldier caught his wife with a lover, deadly shooting on the south side. Afghanistan runs down a wife's paramour in the marriage. Bed, a tragic homecoming for a war hero, finding betrayal. Social media exploded with opinions. He served his country, while she served everyone else. Team Philip, 2 people shot over cheating. He needs to be put in jail. This is why you don't mess with military men's wives. When Detective Williams reached Philip's holding cell, he sat motionless, staring at the wall. He saw only the bedroom scene playing over and over in his mind, wondering when exactly his life had gone off the rails. Was it during his last deployment, or had the signs been there all along? Detective Williams sat at his desk in Area Central, surrounded by photos from the crime scene. The case seemed straightforward at first, a classic crime of passion, but something wasn't adding up. He picked up the job Williams' WAP sheet, drug possession and assault, suspected ties to the Vice Lords gang, but nothing in the last 5 years of his legitimate business, a chain of car washes, was doing well. The gun found at the scene was legally registered to him. Detective Officer Thompson interrupted his thoughts. "You need to see this," she said, handing him a transcript of Lucy Benjamin's phone records. Hundreds of texts between her and Job went back 8 months, but there was also something else. Messages to a burner phone. Discussing life insurance policies and deployment schedules, Thompson said, "Remember that break-in attempt at the Benjamin? Home 4 months ago. Nothing was stolen, but the case went cold. It happened right after Sergeant Benjamin increased his salary to $1 million. Williams leaned back, connecting the dots. "You think this wasn't just an affair? Maybe they were planning something bigger, waiting for him to deploy again at Chicago Med." Lucy Benjamin was recovering from surgery. 2 uniformed officers stood guard outside her room. Detective Williams found her parents still there, Calvin and Regina Morrison, both retired Chicago public school teachers. "Mrs. Benjamin," Williams said, entering the room, "we need to talk." Lucy looked small in the hospital bed, her left arm immobilized. "I already told the other officers what happened. You told them about the affair. But let's talk about the insurance policy and those interesting texts about your husband's deployment." The color drained from her face as she looked at the schedule. Meanwhile, at Cook County Jail, Philip received his first visitor, Michael, his younger brother, and a Chicago Transit Authority driver. "What the hell?" Michael said through the visiting room glass. "I had to hear about this on the news." "How's Mama taking it?" Philip asked. "How do you think she is at church right now, praying with the pastor, organizing support for your defense? Tell her not to bother." "I did what I had to do." Michael leaned closer to the glass. Listen, bro. People are supporting you. Even Lucy's friends from the salon are talking about how she did you wrong. Your army buddies have started a legal defense fund. This isn't over, but Philip seemed to barely hear him. You know what's crazy? When I was in Afghanistan, every night I dreamed of coming home to her. Even when mortars were falling, knowing she was here kept me going. Now I wish I had never come back. Back at Area Central, Detective Williams was building a case against him. The bank record showed a large cash deposit to Lucy's personal account. The job's phone revealed deleted messages about taking care of a soldier problem. They were planning to kill Williams, probably during his next deployment, to make it look like an accident. Combat death or an accident, the affair got sloppy, but the real plan was insurance money. So what now? Thompson asked Benjamin. Still, he killed 2 people. One person, Williams, corrected Lucy. She's alive, and once she's stable, we'll charge her with conspiracy to commit murder. The news hit Chicago's South Side like a bomb at the super clean car wash. Job's main workers gathered to mourn their boss. Many hadn't known about his relationship with Lucy, much less any murder plot. At Sharp Cut Salon, where Lucy worked, opinions were divided. Some defended her, pointing to Philip's long absences. Others, like Shanice, felt betrayed. She sat right there, Shanice told reporters, pointing to Lucy's empty styling station, talking about how much she missed Philip, how proud she was of him serving. Meanwhile, she plotted with her side dude to kill him. That's cold. Social media narratives shifted from victim to villain, wife and soldier love triangle, allegedly planned murder, South Side shooting reveals, deadly insurance scam, war hero, thwarted by own murder. The summer heatwave gripped Chicago as new details emerged from the investigation into the murder of Detective Williams. He stood before reporters at CPD headquarters, laying out the conspiracy that they had uncovered. What initially appeared to be a tragic domestic incident was actually part of a larger criminal conspiracy. Evidence suggests that Mrs. Benjamin and Mr. Williams had been planning the death of Sergeant Williams for financial gain. Security camera. Footage from the car wash showed them meeting late at night. Bank records revealed wire transfers to offshore accounts. A laptop found in Job's car contained research on untraceable poisons and accidents that could look natural in a war zone. Like Chicago Med, Lucy finally broke down under questioning. She sobbed. It wasn't supposed to be like this. She said, Job said it would be quick and clean. Philip wouldn't suffer. Insurance money would set us up for life. So you were going to have your husband killed for money? Williams asked. Recording. The confession. You don't understand these deployments. They changed him. He'd wake up screaming, having flashbacks. Sometimes he didn't recognize me. I was scared of him. The job promised to protect me, but her story didn't match the evidence. Philip's army records showed no history of violent incidents. His psychological evaluations were clean. Neighbors described him as quiet and respectful. At Sharp Cut's salon, Shanice provided another perspective. Lucy changed when she met Job. She told investigators she started wearing expensive stuff, talking about needing more excitement. One time I heard them arguing about timing. She wanted to wait. He was pushing for something to happen sooner. The investigation revealed more players. Job's cousin worked at an insurance company and had helped fast-track Philip's policy. A former cellmate of Job's was arrested, attempting to purchase untraceable weapons as part of a plot. Philip remained largely silent while in jail. His attorney, Patricia Morris, built a strong self-defense case for her client, a decorated combat veteran who returned home to find armed intruders. She repeated to the media that he acted to protect himself in his own home. The fact that these intruders were plotting his murder only strengthens our case. The community rallied around Philip, with local veterans groups organizing protests outside the courthouse. His church collected funds for his defense, and even Lucy's parents publicly supported their son-in-law after learning of the murder plot. We failed to see what our daughter had become. Calvin Morrison told reporters outside the hospital that Philip served his country with honor, while she betrayed everything she vowed to her family and basic human decency. However, the case took another turn when investigators found videos on Job's phone he had recorded conversations with. Lucy, as insurance, filmed a video in their bedroom 2 months earlier. They discussed methods to make it look natural. Anything could happen, according to their plan. Their connection said he could make it look like friendly fire. It would cost extra, but it would be untraceable. Lucy said she would do anything to not have to pretend to be a proud military wife anymore. The evidence was damning. The state's attorney's office charged Lucy with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, solicitation of murder, and insurance fraud. Several of her associates faced related charges. Philip's case was moving toward a rapid resolution given the circumstances and evidence of the murder plot. Prosecutors agreed to reduce the charges to voluntary manslaughter. The death of Job Williams occurred during the commission of a felony, in which he was a willing participant. The state's attorney announced that Mr. Benjamin's actions were extreme, but were influenced by reasonable circumstances. Fear for his life. The Cook County Criminal Courthouse was buzzing with tension as Lucy Benjamin's preliminary hearing began. She appeared in a wheelchair, her left arm still in a sling, wearing beige scrubs issued by the county instead of her usual designer clothes. Philip sat in the gallery, flanked by his brother Michael and their mother, Gloria Benjamin, a retired postal worker who had barely missed a day of court. He had been released on electronic monitoring, citing his military service and cooperation. The prosecutor, Assistant State's Attorney Karen Martinez, laid out the government's case. Your Honor, the evidence will show that the defendant, along with her deceased co-conspirator, engaged in a calculated plot to murder her husband for financial gain. This was not a simple affair gone wrong. This was a premeditated conspiracy to kill a United States soldier. The evidence was overwhelming. Investigators had recovered deleted emails discussing various murder scenarios. One a particularly damning message from Lucy. She said that the next job deployment is in September, which is our window. After that, we'll be set for life. Financial records show that Lucy had already spent some of Philip's combat pay on gifts for the job, including custom rims for his Chrysler. She also took out additional credit cards in Philip's name while he was deployed. Detective Williams testified about the sophisticated nature of the plot. They had multiple plans in place. Plan A was to arrange an accident during deployment. Plan B involved hiring someone. Contractors in Afghanistan even researched ways to make it look like Taliban activity during cross-examination. Lucy's public defender tried to paint her as a victim of manipulation, but the recorded conversations told a different story. In one video, Lucy was clearly pushing for action. We need to stop talking and make this happen. I'm tired of playing the role of a wife every time we FaceTime. I'm tired of listening to him talk about our future when I want a future with you. The testimony that hit me hardest came from Shanice, Lucy's former friend from the salon. She changed completely, starting taking long lunches and coming back with expensive gifts. One time, she laughed about Philip sending her extra money for their anniversary, saying he was basically funding their dates during a break in proceedings. Gloria Benjamin spoke quietly to her son. Baby, I know this hurts, but God brought you home early for a reason. Philip just... The defendant, Philip, nodded his face impassively. The only time he showed emotion was during the playback of surveillance footage from his own home cameras, which he had installed for Lucy's protection. During his absence, the irony was not lost on anyone, as the footage showed Lucy and Job entering the house multiple times over months, often staying overnight. More damaging were their conversations on the back porch, smoking weed and casually discussing murder. It's too risky here, we have to be overseas, Job said. Afghanistan's perfect. Things go wrong there all the time. Just make sure it happens after the policy kicks in and makes it look clean. He deserves that much, at least in court. Lucy broke down during the playback, sobbing loudly, until the judge ordered a recess. Her parents, sitting far from Philip's family, left the courtroom in tears. The preliminary hearing concluded with Lucy being held without bail, the judge citing the severity of the charges and calling the evidence disturbing and significant. Philip's case was moving towards resolution. Given the circumstances, prosecutors offered a plea deal: plead guilty to involuntary manslaughter and receive a sentence of probation without additional jail time. His attorney advised him to accept the deal, but Philip seemed hesitant. "If I accept it, I'm admitting that I did something wrong. A man came into my house with a gun, plotting to kill me, and I'm supposed to apologize." The plea hearing for Philip Benjamin took place on a rainy Tuesday morning. The courtroom was packed with veterans in uniform, church members, family, media, and even some of Lucy's former salon clients who came to support him. Judge Miranda Chen addressed Philip directly. "Sergeant Benjamin, before accepting your plea, I want to ensure that you understand its terms. While the court recognizes the extraordinary circumstances of this case, taking a life remains a serious matter." Philip stood straight, with military bearing, and said, "Yes. Your Honor, I understand that the plea agreement was read into the record. The defendant, Philip, has been given 5 years probation for voluntary manslaughter. He must also undergo mandatory counseling and avoid contact with Lucy Benjamin or her family before his sentence is completed." Judge Chen made an unusual statement in court, noting that while Philip's actions resulted in death, they were in response to what evidence showed was an ongoing criminal conspiracy against him. Because of his service to the country, his clean record, and the unique circumstances, Judge Chen granted him judicial mercy. Philip was fingerprinted one last time and released outside the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions at Sergeant Benjamin, asking if he regretted coming home early and if he had any words for his wife. He ignored them all and walked to his mother's car, with his family forming a protective circle around him. 2 weeks later, Lucy's trial began. She had rejected all plea offers, despite her attorney's advice. The evidence mounted against her: daily text messages showing her coaching job on Philip's military schedule, recordings of calls to offshore banks about moving money, testimony from a job's cousin about helping with fake insurance, security footage of a meeting with a known hitman. The prosecution's closing argument was devastating. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is not about infidelity. This is not about a marriage gone wrong. This is about greed. While Sergeant Benjamin risked his life serving our country, his wife plotted his death. She watched him go to war but planned to ensure he'd never come home." The jury deliberated for just 4 hours and found him guilty on all counts. Judge Chen, presiding over this case, showed no mercy in sentencing. "Mrs. Benjamin, you betrayed not just your marriage vows, but basic human decency. You plotted to murder a man who served his country honorably, who trusted and provided for you. The court sentences you to 25 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections." Corrections. Lucy's sobs echoed through the courtroom as she was led away. Her parents left without speaking to anyone. The aftermath rippled through Chicago's South. Side and salon closed temporarily, then reopened under new management. Shanice started her own shop, naming it Loyalty First Jobs Car Wash. Empire was sold off to pay for legal settlements. His children from a previous relationship received most of the proceeds. Philip resigned from the Army, accepting a medical discharge with full benefits. He started counseling at the VA and eventually began speaking to veterans groups about trauma and betrayal. The house where it happened sold quickly below market value. The new owners gutted the master bedroom, replacing the blood-stained floors. 1 year later, Philip sat in his new apartment, looking at divorce papers. His hand hesitated over the signature line as memories flooded back. Their high school prom, their wedding day, all the homecomings and farewells. His phone rang. I received a text from my VA counselor. The group meeting is at 7 p.m. He said he would be there. Outside Chicago, the endless cycle of new buildings continues. Old buildings fall, and people love, betray, heal, move on. But in certain quiet moments, the echoes of gunshots remain. In the spaces between heartbeats, the echoes linger on a summer night when trust was shattered like a glass of a soldier who came home early and a wife who plotted late.